Good morning, everyone. It's Friday, July 12th. I'm Ben Berkley here with Mark Dent, and you're listening to the Hustle Daily Show. It's never a bad time to do a wellness check on the U.S. economy, and that's exactly what we're going to do today. It's been a data-heavy week, from a new jobs report to updated inflation numbers, and we'll cover everything you need to know about those. And while most of those stats are actually pretty encouraging, it doesn't mean everyone's feeling good in this economic moment. Why? Well, actually, we can't really tell you that because this is just a teaser. But we'll get to that really soon, right after we give you today's hits and headlines. There's a winner in that AI beauty pageant that we've been talking about for the last month. The winner is Kenza Layli, a computer-generated activist and influencer from Morocco. Layli, who we should really stress once again is not real and feels nothing, said that she felt immense joy over her big win. Intuit is laying off 1,800 employees, which is 10% of its workforce, and then they're actually going to be rehiring the same amount of roles across product engineering and customer service with a focus on AI. Costco is going to increase its membership fees for the first time since 2017. Memberships in US and Canada will increase by $5 to $65, and executive membership will jump $10 to $130. And Mark, I know you haven't been to a Costco before, which I'm still processing. I'm working through this. I think we'll make it through in the end. But I just feel like their members are so into it that they will be thrilled to pay more.
Yeah, there's not very many more loyal customer bases than what you'd find than those who go to Costco. And I mean, applause to some degree for Costco for not raising their membership rates for so long. But this might be the sort of least antagonizing price hike maybe in history, I think. No one is going to care.
No.
I will say this. While I've never gone to a Costco, I mean, my wife's family has a membership. And when she tried to go and use his membership card a few weeks ago, she was turned down.
Wow.
That had not happened previously at any point. So I think they're cracking down a little bit on making sure that non-members don't get in, sort of like the Netflix password kind of thing, no sharing.
I mean, people come here for like a business and tech podcast, and now they're just getting the ultimate tragedy story. This is like, I'm so sorry she did not get welcomed into heaven, as it would so seem based on what I was saying before. Let's move on to Tesla, which is supposed to be unveiling its robo-taxi soon. CEO Elon Musk promised that would happen on August 8th, and it is not happening on August 8th anymore. The company needs more time to build prototypes, so the event has moved back to October, at least for now. Maybe they'll move back again. Lastly, the NBA has reportedly finalized media rights deals with NBC, Amazon, and ESPN worth $6.9 billion per season through 2036, which, let's just take a little bit of context here. The previous deal for the league paid out $2.7 billion per season. That's a jump, Mark.
Commissioner Adam Silver could justify a raise for himself of $1 billion per year, if not $2 billion, just alone off of this deal. I think on the surface, it doesn't seem like a great idea if you look at actual viewership numbers for regular season NBA games. However, they watch more of the NBA than they watch anything else. Like, there is nothing else that people turn on the television for other than live sports. So even though live sports have a diminishing audience, and one that I think will diminish even further, especially given that teenagers right now, they don't really watch sports as much as like people our age who are in our 30s did when we were younger. So I think the audience is just going to continue to decline. But that said, these stations like NBC, it wants to continue to exist. And I think the best path forward for them to continue to exist is to have any type of live raft, aka live sports on television. And the different networks that don't get the live sports, Turner networks, they're going to be having some real trouble, even though, you know, they're going to be saving a few billion a year.
Yeah, I mean, I think their networks, what can they do? This is their only way forward, and then eventually, you know, maybe give us another 20 years and they'll probably all be dead. But I think that one thing you're going to also see just out of all of this is just the increase in player salaries alone, like the deals that have been signed this offseason. I mean, I think there are an extraordinary number of them are above $200 million.
Yes, people will be making $50 million a year who might be a third option on a team, maybe even a fourth on some nights.
Great gig, honestly. I could get on board with that. Well, let's move on to our top story today. We are talking about the twisted web of all twisted webs, which is the U.S. economy. This week brought headlines that overall trended pretty positive. Inflation cools, job growth exceeds forecasts, and the Fed is inching toward a rate cut. We hope to see that soon. But that hardly tells the whole story. So first off, Mark, can you run down the most critical numbers that we've learned this week?
Yeah, so for the last few days, we've just been kind of like bombarded with numbers. It's just all the economic news comes at once. And this is how it happens most of the time. But these numbers have really kind of meant a lot. And to start it off, U.S. consumer prices dropped in June just barely. They dipped 0.1%. But that's still enough to mark the first monthly decline in cost of living since May 2020 during the pandemic. And similarly, the U.S. inflation rate fell to its lowest point in a year, dipping from 3.3% down to 3%. That's still above like the kind of target that we always go for in the US, which is, closer to 2%. But nevertheless, it's progress. And then finally, the jobs report, which came out a few days ago, showed that 206,000 jobs were added in June, which beat expectations and marks the 42nd month in a row that there's been job growth. However, the unemployment rate inched upward 0.1 of a point to 4.1%. And so now the unemployment rate is above 4% for the first time since November 2021, which is a bit concerning.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like we are constantly on a seesaw where it's like you get good news. There's always going to be something to counterbalance it. Even if you look at the very specific price movement of last month where airfare was down 5%, great. Gasoline down 3.8%. But then you look on the other side, it's like piped utility gas service is up 2.4%. Why? Why is this happening to us? But there's always got to be that sucker punch coming in after you get some good news.
Yeah, I mean, the economy is big and unwieldy. There's so many different things going on all at once.
Fair. Well, let's kind of break these down one by one here. Let's go back to the inflation report. And it seems like this is going to at least move us closer to the end zone on the Fed changing rates.
So a lot of the analysts are saying that by September, there's a pretty good chance that the Fed is going to start cutting its benchmark rates. And, they also meet again in December. And clearly one of those months, if this kind of news continues, that they would more than likely decrease interest rates. The Fed funds effective rate has been around 5%, a little bit over 5% for like the last several months, which is quite high. I mean, if you look back to the pre-pandemic days, it was at about 2.5%. So there's been a huge difference. As we all know, interest rates have been really high. So that is something that we could see happening as early as September. It probably won't happen this month when the Fed meets. And I think it's just pretty obvious like why we've seen this. We've talked about this a lot on here, that there's just kind of story after story of retailers kind of deciding like, we need to cut our prices, responding to consumer demand. For a long time, consumers were just buying through it. It's like, we don't care. We're just going to buy. But it became pretty clear in the last few months and even in the last year that hasn't been the case. And we've seen like the fast food restaurants bring back their cheaper value meals. Pepsi and Frito-Lay, Starbucks, they've all reported just sort of like declining sales in terms of quantity, at least, if not in terms of dollar amount. And they're feeling that sting, and they've actually responded by dropping the prices.
Well, let's zoom out even further here for a second and just talk about then the jobs report, because, it overall is good, but it also kind of seems like it portends a little bit of economic concern, just in that it's, starting to downshift maybe a little bit.
So this is where things get really weird and complicated, in my opinion. Yeah, the unemployment rate is still pretty solid, 4.1%, not bad. And it's only up just a little bit over the last month. And over the last year, it's really not gone up all that much, but it has gone up. And where it gets weird, I think, is that this is sort of what the Fed has wanted. Not that they want to personally see people lose jobs. Like, they're not out there, I don't think, to just be like, lose jobs.
If they're doing that, they need to stop. That's so rude. Why would they do that?
But what they've been trying to do, and this phrase has been repeated so many damn times, but the so-called soft landing, right, that they've been going for. They've pumped these interest rates and hoping the economy kind of stays intact. And it's largely been doing that. But you can't just have everything stay intact. It has to like tumble a little bit. So by creeping upward a little bit, This is either what the Fed is hoping for or potentially a sign that maybe this kind of soft landing isn't going to be so soft. Like if this thing continues to go upward, it could be a sign, analysts say, that the Fed has perhaps kept the interest rates too high for too long. And it's something that we probably won't realize for a few more months if we see this unemployment rate continue to rise.
Well, it'll also hit everyone different. Like, I think that's the thing that really jumps out to me. Even, we talk about all these numbers today. My mind always latches on to another one that we covered a couple months ago, which is 51%. That's when, a few months ago, the New York Times asked Americans how they'd rate economic conditions. 51% said poor. Only 26% said either good or excellent. Like a few good reports build momentum and they're nice to see. They still can't really change the vibe. Like this, we're still in this vibe session moment. And I think one thing that really jumped out this week in relation to that was a report on left behind counties. Could you explain a little bit more what those are?
Yeah. And so this was actually really good news. And so there have been left behind counties, which are fairly, it's not exactly a scientific sounding name, obviously, but it represents about 18% of the United States population. And it's about 1,000 or so counties. And they, since the year 2000, have had a lot of struggles with job growth and population growth. And that's why they're known as being left behind. If you look at their job growth in the 2010s, it was about 1/3 of the growth rate of the rest of the country. So they basically did not recover from the Great Recession at all. However, in this week of, just this deluge of economic news, there was a really important report that came out from the Economic Innovation Group that showed over the last 4 years, these left behind counties have actually been doing pretty well. They've seen job growth rate 4 times faster from 2020 to 2023 than they saw in the previous 4 years. Now, that's still only about 2/3 the growth rate of kind of every other county or the US average. So it's still not like they've caught up to the rest of the country or anything like that. But it's still, fantastic progress. And if it continues, it's very good news. It fits the same as during the last 2 or 3 years, we've also seen wages grow the fastest among the lowest quintile of income earners in America. So I think similar to that, in this very mixed economic situation we've been in, there have been some gains for people and places that have not traditionally seen gains in the last couple of decades.
And, it's interesting to see how that feels. I think that that's something that we can pass over to our non-existent political podcast to handle that side of things, which nobody can listen to because, again, it is not real, just like the AI beauty pageant queen from before. But, this is all stuff that we will continue to come back to because it's endless. We are just going to be under this absolute barrage of numbers constantly, and we're going to hopefully continue to have ones that feel largely good, but there's always going to be a little something that strikes some fear.
Yeah, I know. And with all those non-existent things, we just saw the AI-related layoffs. So that's going to be a whole new thing for the economy that will make it even more confusing. Yay.
Cannot wait, but we'll at least wait a couple days because that's going to do it for us today. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to the Hustle Daily Show. We are a proud part of the HubSpot Podcast Network. Our editor today is Robert Hartwig, and our executive producer is Darren Clark. We've got a lot more tech and business coverage in our newsletter. If you're not subscribed, go get yourself signed up at thehustle.co/email, and we will see you on Sunday.